A hearty good morning, afternoon, evening, as the case may be to you, and welcome to our ChatGPT special event. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to share the stage with Tim. And I am just super excited to hear what our experts and our practitioners have to say today. Just to set the stage a little bit for this event, we've tried to put together today's program in a way that doesn't just stand back and admire the gleam and the shine of this shiny new object that we all have in ChatGPT and generative AI. We obviously think it's super interesting, of course, and every day it seems like we're remarking about the pace of development accelerating here. But we also think that just holding this celebratory surface level type of event would be doing you, our customers, a disservice. This is a complicated technology, and it has implications fundamental and profound. A lot of things might change, and they might change in ways that we just don't anticipate now. That's, of course, always been true of technology, and part of O'Reilly's mission over the past few decades has been to figure out where the current is flowing and where the innovators are leading us, and then to amplify their signals out to the rest of the world. So this event is part of that journey for us. We need to think overall, not just about the possibilities and the promise of ChatGPT and generative AI and the outcomes and the results that their continued progress will bring, but we also need to be thinking about some of the pitfalls. What do you need to be careful of if you're on the leading edge right now, but especially as you get deeper into production with this technology? What are some of the things that you will need to watch for? In search of those answers, today we'll hear from one of the folks leading the charge for generative AI at one of the world's leading cloud and productivity software companies. We'll hear from the CEO of the company behind one of the most popular software development tools in existence on how ChatGPT and its future iterations will change software development. We'll hear from a partner of ours on actually using ChatGPT in production and circumventing some of its challenges. We'll learn from one of our esteemed trainers about building apps using ChatGPT. We'll also hear from a research vice president at a global search giant about how they're thinking about intelligence and artificial general intelligence, or AGI. We'll learn about a large financial advisory company and their efforts in using ChatGPT to enhance the advisory services that they provide to their customers. And then we'll wrap up today with a look inside O'Reilly about how we're using large language models to enhance personalized learning. So, whether you are a champion of generative AI and you're eager to use ChatGPT and its ilk in every task and every tool and every project that you have, or if you're a generative AI skeptic and you think a lot of the pomp and the circumstance around ChatGPT is smoke but no fire, then I hope you'll find content and points of view today that will expand your view, make you think, and maybe even rethink your position, and hopefully feel a little bit better prepared for whatever the future might hold. So let me take one moment here to direct you to a couple of resources our team has put together for you. On the landing page for the event, there's some recommended reading that's highlighting some of the base content on the O'Reilly platform that we've pulled together to help set the stage for today's event and also to whet your appetite. There's also a ChatGPT expert playlist that's going to grab smaller chunks of content from across all of our relevant library. And we'll break that out into fundamentals, first steps, and next steps. And obviously, keep your eyes peeled because we have a rich pipeline of books, live events, on-demand courses, live courses, all around generative AI that are coming in the months ahead. And we're super excited to roll those out. So that's enough from me. Let's go into the first session here on reshaping search with Bing. This is with Jordi Ribas and Tim O'Reilly. Tim, obviously, is our fearless leader, founder, CEO, chairman of O'Reilly Media, company that has been providing the picks and shovels of learning to the Silicon Valley gold rush for the past 35 years. The company has a history of convening conversations that reshape the computer industry. If you've heard the term open source software, Web 2.0, the maker movement, government as a platform, or the WTF economy, he's had a hand in framing each of those big ideas. We also have Jordi Ribas, a corporate vice president of search and AI at Microsoft, leading the product and engineering teams responsible for Bing Search worldwide, as well as Microsoft Search and Bing for Enterprise. Since 2008, Jordi has led multiple product and engineering teams focused on AI products and services, such as search, speech, vision, and digital assistants. He was on point for Bing product and growth in 2014 and took on all of Bing in 2020. And in February of 2023, he and team released the new Bing, which was the first large-scale search engine with search-grounded GPT answers and multi-turn chat-based search, launching a new era of AI-powered search. So without further ado, let's hear from Jordi and Tim.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here with Jordi Ribas, who's the corporate VP for Search and AI at Microsoft. Welcome, Jordi.
Thank you, Tim. It's great being here.
He's been in charge of Bing for a while, and suddenly Bing is in the news. And we're going to be talking to Jordi about all the reasons why, and in particular about AI. So I guess I'd start with the question of what have you learned from users since the release of AI-powered Bing, and how's that shaping your future strategy?
Thanks, Tim. It's great talking to you. Well, we've learned quite a lot. We have generally learned that users are really enjoying the product, and that's really what makes us excited about what we've done. We get a lot of positive feedback about how they enjoy the ability to transition smoothly from the search mode to the chat mode. And depending on the query, they go into one mode or the other, or sometimes both, and being able to pivot back and forth. We've also learned that they're using the product in different ways that we did not anticipate. Primarily, we built a search product. And when we look at, for example, the chat mode, we see about 60% of all the chats have to do with search, and they have to do with information retrieval, information extraction, search in general, right? And we thought that percentage would be higher. We noticed a number of users are about 15-20% are using it to create, and they are not using it essentially as a search engine, but to maybe create letters, songs, poems. Basically, they cut and paste information. They use it to code, to source coding. And so that we expected some, but maybe it was a higher percentage than we thought. And then also the other remaining 20% or so are using it just to chat and just to basically chit chat with the search engine, not necessarily to do anything creative, not necessarily to do anything formal in search. And so that was also a higher percentage that we expected.
Does that seem like that's just tire kicking, or do you think it's, I want to experience the AI, or is there something there about people are just enjoying this idea of conversing with this this program that, has unexpected responses? So it's kind of like exploring the web in the early days. You were just clicking on things for the hell of it. You wanted to find out what was happening. And here it's like, wow, what's it going to say?
Yes. In fact, it's hard to tell exactly, what people have in mind sometimes when they're using the product. But our intuition is that they definitely are surprised and maybe impressed with the capabilities of the chat mode, meaning the conversation capabilities, and they're having fun with it. If you look at the logs, you see people having all sorts of types of conversations, right? And so it's definitely great to see that people are enjoying it. But you see people doing all sorts. Like, even though I gave you some rough percentages, you see the same user using the product in different ways, meaning that they sometimes just want to have some fun and chat a little bit. Sometimes they want to create something. And most of the time, as we were hoping, they are actually searching the web.
Yeah, although from Microsoft's point of view, the other behaviors are really good news because, of course, I guess, you already have GitHub Copilot, and you've announced that, Copilot is going to be coming to Office. And so if, in effect, people are going to be using that, hey, I want to create something, and because it's, I think, I forget who said this originally, but these large language models are like having like 1,000 interns at your disposal, because suddenly you can ask it to do first drafts of virtually anything, and it may not be right, but as I think Satya said, it can even be usefully wrong.
I think the beauty of these models is that they can inspire you. And of course, if you're searching for something on the web and you want to, you have a question that is a complex question that generally would not be answered by a traditional search engine, they've got this ability to extract the information from multiple sources and synthesize a new answer for you that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And that's like magic. But at the same time, there is magic too in being able to ask for inspiration when you're writing an essay, writing a letter, writing some source code, right? And this ability to transition to that scenario, in a very smooth way is one of the things that I think makes the product really fun.
Yeah, I want to kind of unpack a little bit more of this notion that it's changing the nature of search. You're not just getting a result that, maybe, in the old days, you guys would say, we think this is going to be the kind of synthetic result that people want. But now you're really generating it on the fly in response to very, very specific requests. Can you kind of, how does that change, not only the nature of search, but give you insight into the changing nature of all future applications, where you're just going to be able to be much more specific in natural language with what you want, and the program responds with a kind of this synthetic response that's just for you.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that is the beauty, if you like, of the combination of search with this large language model technology. The fact that it can create new answers that you wouldn't find anywhere. And now the answers are there. It just sometimes you would need to go through a lot of sources, spend a lot of time, and find that information on your own. And we can save you all that time. And I'll give you an example. If you, for example, I don't know if you are a runner, but if you run marathons, my wife, is a runner. And so she ran the Seattle Marathon. And she was wondering, okay, well, I like to run the New York City Marathon someday, but what should I do differently to prepare for it? And if you ask this in a natural way, you type that query in a traditional search engine, well, often it'll break because it's a long natural query. Search engines are generally used to queries that are 2 to 3 words max. That's, if you look at the vast majority of searches, that's what they are. But now you can type this long, complex, natural query, and then what the new Bing will do is look at all the results that you have on the web, and you will find some results that have to do with the Seattle Marathon, others that have to do with the New York City Marathon. But you won't really have a specific result that will be like, oh, I ran the Seattle Marathon, and then I went and ran the New York City Marathon. This is what, these are the tidbits of information that you should know. Just that.
So did
result that happen to exist, but then it'll be created for you by being able to extract that knowledge and reason over all these documents, and then you'll be able to get the answer that you're looking for.
Did your wife actually try that query, and was it correct, or was it usefully wrong?
It was correct. No, in fact, there is a bit of a misconception that, oh wow, these models make up stuff, and that is true. And I think that is one thing that we learned when we saw GPT-4 for the first time last summer. we knew that it was special. It was a breakthrough in large language models. It was able to reason, synthesize, extract information in ways that we hadn't seen before. And so we're very excited about it. But it did have two problems. One, as you probably know, is that it was trained with data through 2021. So it was not able to answer questions beyond that date. And secondly is what we were just talking about, the fact that it would make up stuff. It would hallucinate. That's the term that people use. And obviously, when you want to build a search engine, those two are big problems, right?
Yeah.
And for a lot of other applications, obviously, you've seen what's happened with ChatGPT. People are using it for a lot of other things, and it's really, really helpful. But if you want to search, you really want to be able to answer questions up to right now. And you also want to make sure that the information is accurate. And so what we did, we didn't just put, say, the GPT model, GPT-4, inside Bing. What we actually did, we combined search and Bing in a process that we call grounding. We basically have a model on top of the GPT model that we call Prometheus, which what it does, it takes the query from the user with the context if it's in a conversation, and then it actually leverages both search and GPT to break the query into pieces. And that's, if you've used the new Bing, you'll notice that sometimes it says searching for, and it can do several additional searches. What we're actually doing, we're going to the Bing index, and then we're selecting the information from the web that's fresh, that's comprehensive, and we package it, and then we provide that information into the GPT model, and the model reasons over it. So we're grounding the model with fresh, accurate search information. That's why if you look at a lot of the shootouts out there when people are comparing Bing with ChatGPT or with Bard, a lot of the times, the conclusion is, if you've got a recent query, a fresh query, if you want more accurate results, and you want to reduce the risk of hallucination, the new Bing does a really great job, and it's because of this search grounding process as part of what we call, again, the Prometheus model.
Yeah, we've been talking about the user interface and the opportunities there. But what about the business model? The business model of search has been advertising. What's your sense of how this is going to change? It's obviously a big challenge for, anybody who's, suddenly you have a whole new game. What's your thinking about how ads will fit into this, or whether they will fit it?
We think ads will play an important role. In fact, even today, if you use the new Bing and you go to the chat mode, you notice that we have references for the result, for what we call the chat answer.
Right.
If you hover on those references, you'll notice that sometimes we actually include ads in the list. Mm-hmm. And sometimes also for certain types of queries. For example, if it's a hotels query, you will also see product ads, which are the ones that are images with some text that are part of the conversation. So we actually attach them at the bottom of the chat response. And so we already have these text ads embedded into the chat answer with the citations and the product ads. And so definitely ads, we think, will continue to play a role. But there might be some evolution as well in terms of the way we monetize, like the plugin architectures that we're talking about, where companies can include their own mini applications, if you like, that get connected to the large language model. That may lead to other ways of monetizing. But I think at the heart of it, I think it's still going to be driven by advertising.
I want to come back to the plugin discussion, but let's go a little further on this advertising model. Clearly, when in the early web search engines, they were still kind of doing the in-your-face display advertising, and then we got pay-per-click, which for a pretty for the better part of a decade, was pretty well aligned with, user intent. Users are searching for something, and there's a parallel stream of ads. People get paid only when they're relevant. So both the query and the ad were relevant to the user. And in this scenario, I go, we have to reinvent ad relevance, I think, to make them useful to the user. But there's also, I guess, a question of what Larry and Sergey at Google originally called the problem of mixed motives when you have advertising, because your goal, if your goal is to get the user the best result, you might come up with one thing. If you start injecting ads too heavily, which are not the goals of the user but the goals of the advertiser, how do you think about that in this AI context?
Well, ads in search have always been a balance, right? I think it's well known that obviously you use two components to decide whether to show an ad in search results. One is the relevance of the ad, and obviously the more relevant the ad, the more clicks the ad will get, and the more conversions will provide to the advertiser. But then there's also the bid. How much is the advertiser bidding for the words in the query? And there is competition, so to speak, in the bidding mechanism, and it creates the what we call the marketplace, right? And so we definitely know that the more relevant the ad, it's better for everyone, and so that's usually the pivot on how we start when it comes to showing ads. The same will be true for chat, right? I think ultimately chat response is composed of sentences that come from different references or those product ads that I was mentioning. And so if the user hovers on one of those citations and sees an ad, if the ad is relevant, obviously we have marked and labeled what's an ad and what's not, much like in regular search. Then we'll see clicks in it, and ultimately what the advertisers want is the clicks to become conversions.
Yeah, I think the point that I would want to make is that many of the people who are in the audience currently do search advertising, social media marketing, so on, and this is a new frontier which is going to have new rules, and there's going to be a mutual process of discovery by platforms and basically companies that are trying to use those platforms about what works in this new environment. So I guess we're headed for a period where people will need to be learning a lot about what's new and how it goes. Does that make sense to you?
There'll definitely be some changes in terms of the details, but I think at a high level, I think that the concepts that I was mentioning, that ads being relevant, bids being taken into account, the marketplace working, I think it's going to operate with similar fundamentals. We get the same question about SEO. We need to SEO differently. But a lot of it is going to be similar because remember, one of the key differences that the new Bing has, say, ChatGPT, is this grounding mechanism. And the grounding mechanism is just from search results. And ultimately is all pivoted on the search results as well. You're right that there will be some details that people will need to think through, in terms of, how you SEO, how you bid, and so on. I think it's going to be more of an evolution than a revolution.
Are you familiar with what Adept.ai is doing?
I am not. I mean, I heard a little bit, but not very familiar.
I'm just sort of curious because they're envisioning building, conversational interfaces to virtually every app. Now, of course, Microsoft has already announced they're going to build a lot of this technology into Office, for example. But I do wonder how deep this, change is going to be. You think about the change from DOS to Windows, from windows to the web. And now we're really, web to mobile was a change in, the type of applications, but it didn't really change the UI that much. It had to be more compact, but it was still, and it assumed touch screens and so on. But it was still very information rich. And so here we have a whole new paradigm. And to the extent that it becomes not just about information, but about, being able to control operating systems, apps, whatever, how do you see that progressing, or is it just too early to tell?
Well, definitely, I'd love to be able to go 5 years from now and see where we are. I think we haven't seen anything yet of what's possible. I think there is a lot of capabilities in these models that are going to really even surprise us, even years from now. I think people are even today using the capabilities in ways we did not anticipate. And it's really exciting. I think you gave several examples in terms of, PC, web, mobile. I think definitely is another of these big steps where basically the UX, the way people experience products is fundamentally going to change. It's going to be more natural. It's going to be a lot easier to do essentially anything. Whether it's, now we talk a lot about writing and how the LLMs are helping you write essays, letters, write code, how they are helping in search. And that's why you see us at Microsoft integrating it into Bing, into Office. But one of the things that's also impressive, and I unfortunately cannot say too much about it, is that we have all sorts of companies coming to Azure where we're hosting the GPT models. And there are all sorts of startups or more mature companies that they have all these different use cases that go, well, they range from, you name it, anything that has to do from customer support to creating innovations that we hadn't even thought about. And so definitely it's going to be a new world. I think it's going to happen a lot faster than we think. Like I've been reading articles saying, well, even when, even the internet took time, there was an article, I think, in the New York Times talking about how, well, all these revolutions, everybody thinks they're happening tomorrow, but look, even, it took a long time for engines to replace horses. They were giving all these different paradigms, right? Oh. But this is different because this is already on the web. The applications are really exploding as we speak. And so even if you just look at more generically how people have embraced ChatGPT, how quickly it reached 100 million users, right? If you plot how long it took Facebook to hit 100 million users, or Netflix, guys, this you see these curves that are like this, and then the ChatGPT curve is like this, right? And so same thing is happening with us in Bing. Like we're seeing that this big spike of users, and I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. These tools are so useful and delightful that when people find out what they can do, they definitely want to be part of it. And so that's why I think it's definitely going to happen faster than a lot of folks think.
You mentioned the connection to Azure, and do you think this is going to be a boost to Azure, that you've got, that it's the hosting platform for both OpenAI and the Bing? Is that a...
We think so. Yeah. We definitely think so, because obviously we've been working closely with OpenAI, and we're hosting all their models in Azure. And we have, by scaling Bing, we've learned a lot on how to scale these models. We fixed a lot of bugs, a lot of problems. How do you get tens of millions of users on it in a reliable way? And so definitely we think we are ahead, and it gives us an opportunity to really be at the forefront of enabling all these other companies that are interested in leveraging these capabilities to come to Azure and basically, be able to take advantage of the latest technology that's best tested and best run, given everything that we've done.
Do you think will OpenAI plugins require Azure or work better with Azure, or are there any dependencies?
To be honest, I'm not sure about the plugins, what the restrictions are going to be. I do think that given that the GPT models themselves will be in Azure, there will be benefits if people build on Azure. And definitely, I think that's where probably a lot of companies will start, because it'll just be simpler. At the same time, to be fully frank with you, I'm not fully sure.
Okay, that's fine. Hey, you talked about how fast this is going to go. And you probably heard about the open letter by Elon Musk and others calling for an AI pause. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's good that there is a healthy debate about these technologies. I think, like any new technology, there are always questions and positive uses of it, or negative uses of it. But when I look at what we've done, and I look at the user delight, that's really what I see. I mean, obviously you can always hypothesize a lot of different things about how the technologies can be used, but if you look at the millions of users that are using the products today, they're really using them to make their lives better, and they're finding that they are more productive, that they can really get inspired, and that's really what I think is the core of what's driving this revolution, is the fact that people are finding the tools really useful. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm focused on. I want to try to make the new Bing as helpful and as delightful for users as it can be. And I think that at the end of the day, this is what's going to prevail. While at the same time, we do need to be thoughtful, and we need to make sure, not just with LLMs, but with AI technology in general. And we've said this at Microsoft from the beginning, that there needs to be responsible uses. There needs to be some regulation that makes sure that the use, much like any other product, really, there's got to be regulation to make sure it's used the proper way.
Yeah. My concern is there's been a lot of fear mongering by people who bought into this idea of rogue AI, and this is I think it's been referred to, people talking about like it's a nuclear bomb. My sense is we're nowhere near that point, and in fact, they cite surveys of people who are afraid of very, very bad results. But this was a survey of people imagining artificial general intelligence in 2059, and yet it's presented as though we're at that point today. And I don't think we're there at all. I mean, these are tools that are invoked by humans, and the kinds of risks that we have to worry about are things like, will they accelerate the ability to create misinformation? Will they, there'll be a lot of frontiers of, by which bad actors can, for example, generate, deep fakes. That's becoming easier and easier. But those are not, humanity-ending kinds of problems. They're problems like the ones that we've been facing on the internet for decades, magnified perhaps. But the fact is, the countermeasures are also going to be magnified, and there may even be some opportunities where you go, wow, if people learn to not trust what they, see and hear, that could be a good thing. It's like you go, oh wait, I really have to verify this. And anyway, that's a.
Yeah, no, that's a great reflection, and I think you're right. Obviously, the way we look at these tools are, you define it very well. They are accelerators. We know when people are using Copilot in GitHub that they basically get roughly a 2x, productivity boost in terms of the amount of code that they can write. And the same is going to happen when you'll have these tools in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint. You're going to see how people can be basically a lot more productive than what they are today. They'll be able to answer questions in search that they were never able to get before. And that's the beauty of the integration that we've done in the new Bing. And so I feel like at the end of the day, that's what's going to be the core of the value that people will see. Unfortunately, there is a lot of fear because of some of it is all these Hollywood movies of the AI taking over the role, and we are far from an AGI. I mean, these are tools. I mean, this is not the artificial generalized intelligence that people talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's so many predictions on when, if we'll get there, right? And so I think that there is unfortunately a lot of that. Now, there are potential problems that we need to be very aware of, and you mentioned a couple that I think are important problems. One is the ability to proliferate misinformation is going to be enhanced by these tools, and that's true. But you said something very important too. Our ability to protect from it will be enhanced too. And reality is that we as a search engines, we've dealt with spam, junk, misinformation for years, and we're constantly developing technologies to try to downrank this type of information for queries, and so that will continue. The other one that you mentioned are deepfakes. Definitely, I think there should be some way to regulate, like if somebody creates a fake video of you and I doing an interview saying crazy things, so there should be some way to say, okay, well, this is not right, and so exactly what obviously regulators need to step in, but at the same time, the ability to create videos, just from a thought, or now even in the new Bing, we've got the DALL-E OpenAI model where you can type a few words and you can create images. That's really powerful. And we see users loving it and finding inspiration with it and being a lot more productive in their jobs with it. And so you gotta obviously have a balance, and we need to be thoughtful. But I also worry that the fear mongering is exaggerated, and we need to, be balanced and think through this, with pros and cons. But I think at the end of the day, the pros will clearly outweigh the pros will clearly outweigh the cons, and we're already seeing that.
Yeah. A lot of people are speculating that there'll be lots of job losses because it'll make certain kinds of jobs obsolete. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that there'll be some changes, and much like with any technology, some jobs might be lost. At the same time, others will be created. And I don't know if this is a great reference, but I do remember when Excel was created, a lot of accountants were thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose my job. And it is true that today, one accountant with Excel can do what maybe 50 accountants were able to do, maybe 50 years ago, right? But accountants have not lost their jobs. They've been a lot more productive. It's a lot of accountants out there, right? And so I kind of envision the same evolution with this technology, making everybody more productive. And yes, maybe there will be a given department in a company that will say, oh, wow, before we needed 10 people to do this job, maybe now we only need, a couple. But there will be other jobs for these other folks that will be able to leverage the LLMs and ultimately make society more productive all up.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental law that economists talk about, which is that when things become cheaper, people tend to use more of them. So all of a sudden there's a lot of capabilities that yes, we're paying people to do, and now maybe they'll be being done. They will be done by an AI, but it's not like there's not enough work. There's so much that needs doing that this becomes the superpower. I think companies that really understand this will tackle new problems and go, wow, we now have new capabilities that let us solve things that we couldn't afford to solve before. And now we can afford it, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, anyway, I think your insight is absolutely correct. And in fact, another angle of this is that these tools will be able to not only make you more productive, but also save you time on doing things that are not that much fun. Is what Satya often talks about, like the drudgery of work, right? The less interesting and maybe less creative aspect of your job, you can easily just get it done with these tools. And I'll give you an example. In fact, a few months ago, obviously we were talking a lot about the large language models, and my boss asked me to go to this offsite and write a document about it. And, I was working really hard on the new Bing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, now I got to do this. And it's something that, intuitively I could write. I could take a few hours to do it. But I just went to the new Bing and I said, okay, well, tell me, write a few paragraphs about what's a large language model. Now write a few paragraphs about the benefits. What are some of the challenges or drawbacks, right? Literally something that would probably have taken me, 3 to 4 hours. In half an hour, I was done with the paper. Of course, there was a section of that paper that I had to, it was more my insights, so to speak, but a lot of the background, a lot of the information that's out there, I was able to get that done, super fast. And what was interesting is that I posted this document very late at night, and my boss and my boss's boss were like, wow, that was very quick, Jordi, and the document is very well written. I was like,
well, on that note,
yeah. So
on that note, I think we're out of time, and it's wonderful to hear that optimism that this is an accelerator for productivity, and not it's just that the benefits so far outweigh the risks. I'm with you on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Super interesting conversation thus far. I think there's some interesting questions that folks have been submitting throughout here. I think a lot of them kind of surround one that has come up repeatedly. Actually, is are any of the presenters today actually AI generated personas? And I can confirm that no, we're all very much real. This previous session obviously was recorded due to a scheduling conflict. The remainder of the sessions today will be live, but we're all real people, real humans. If you prick us, we bleed. So hopefully that provides some reassurance. Other questions in here kind of come around the theme of what Tim and Jordi were discussing around ads, and how do we kind of reconcile the commercial aspects of search and the sort of orientation towards ads with the fact that people searching generally want information that's relevant to them, and they're not necessarily interested in sort of being co-opted commercially. And also, how does ChatGPT affect how ad selection is done? And I wonder, Tim, if you've got some thoughts about, from your conversation with Jordi, about how you see the future of, the ad-funded search, ad-oriented search versus, how things have traditionally been, and how ChatGPT and GPT-4 will sort of affect things.
I don't think anybody has an answer to that question, because it's going to be a process of discovery. That was something Jordi and I talked about. People are going, well, first of all, if you look back at the history of the web, in the early stages, there was really bad advertising. And then first at Overture and then at Google, they figured out this pay-per-click thing. And, there was I would say 10 years that were kind of the golden age of alignment, which is a term we use a lot now for AI. But there was really alignment between the advertising business model and web search, where Google had organic links and they had ads, and they were both tuned for relevance. And so you just had two parallel streams. I think what happened and where the web went wrong later was by substituting ads for organic content rather than using it as a complement. And I think if you look at what's happening with these chat models, you could certainly imagine a parallel stream of advertising that is helpful. If somebody's having this conversation, is trying to, and it's just this idea of relevance is still there. Let's just say, imagine you're saying, I want to have imagine you say to Bing Chat or Chat GPT, imagine a conversation between Milton Friedman and John Maynard Keynes on the causes of inflation, and it's going on, and then you go, well, bang, here's some ads for books about these two guys, and you go, somebody might go, yeah, I actually want to go read that book. And it's just, you just have to, it'll be a web design issue really to say, well, what's the space that we create for ads, and there's somebody's going to experiment with, well, let's see what happens if it acts like stupid Alexa, that our ChatGPT's earlier idiot cousin, so hey, would you like to, it's interrupting you all the time with an ad, and you go, that there's no reason for that to happen, partly because we're going to have new modalities. It's going to be different whether you're talking to it or whether you're typing to it. I predict a big period of experimentation, and of course, when there's a big period of experimentation, that's opportunity. That's when companies can really distinguish themselves. So I would just say, get out there and just try things. And the other thing I would say is, I think we are going to see more subscription models. We've taken for granted that advertising is the native model for the web. But here on, already with these large models, it's, people are paying for API tokens. Mm-hmm. And effectively, how are they going to pass that along to their customers? Maybe some of them will pass it along by monetizing with advertising, but others are going to be just saying, hey, you got to buy tokens too. Mm-hmm. Nat Friedman who was the former CEO of GitHub, kind of put up a little playground where you can compare the output of various models, and he was doing it just as an experiment, just for free, and all of a sudden it was costing him a fortune. So he just said to his users, you have to buy tokens. And suddenly he wasn't trying to build a business, it suddenly turned into a moneymaker for him. And so I think we're going to see, again, there's an opportunity for experimentation. Mm-hmm. This is the biggest greenfield opportunity for developers, for entrepreneurs that we've seen, in a decade at least, really since the advent of mobile. So that's almost 2 decades.
I'm curious, and we just got a question on this actually, that there's, speaking of search, there's obviously this whole industry around search engine optimization, SEO, and, entire companies have been built around building content and driving content in a way that optimizes for ads and to drive people to click on an ad. And so, I kind of wonder, with SEO being sort of this, it might have a questionable future when it comes to how we see ChatGPT evolving here, and as search kind of becomes integrated in that. So how do you see content being generated here and specifically built so that relevant information is driven to users, and to get away from that incentive to actually build ads and do SEO to just specifically drive a user to ask a question and to click an ad?
Yeah, well, I'm not entirely sure. Again, as I said, my basic feeling is there's going to be this arms race and a bit of a period of very rapid experimentation. I do think that it's in the interests of the companies that are creating these models not to have them get polluted too early by advertising. I think that Microsoft is in an actually pretty interesting position. Well, actually, if you just sort of handicap the overall market, you see, okay, Google has a very large business that they have to protect. Microsoft has nothing to lose. OpenAI has nothing to lose. But that also means they're freer to experiment. And so I would expect Google to be a little cautious, although maybe with the challenges they're going to go, we have to throw caution to the winds, who knows. And they do have a history in the past of saying, well, actually I think back to 2011 when they kind of put a whole bunch of content farms out of business with the Panda update. They took a hit to their revenue, and they might do that again, where they say, hey, this is a new tool for relevance. I do think this puts a lot more power in the hands of end users and developers. For a long time, we've really been in the position where the big companies call all the shots. And despite everybody says, oh, this is all about big centralization because the models are so large and so expensive to develop. But you could say the same thing about a chip fab. The innovation is happening on top of what is offered by OpenAI or Google or even Microsoft. So that's why I think we are looking forward to what develops in the plugin architecture. But already people are just, there's a lot of APIs that are available. And what's really called for is creativity, figuring out what applications you can build. Anyway, before we get too far, I want to bring up one question I saw go by was just people saying, how do I get to use this stuff? And I just wanted to point out, if you just go to openai.com and follow the links to ChatGPT, you can sign up for an account, and then you just log in and you can start chatting with ChatGPT. In the case of Bing, you need to download the Edge browser. And then if you go to bing.com, you'll be able to use Bing Chat, which is the equivalent of the OpenAI chat. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And I think the sooner if you haven't done it already, you should just go. You should try it. Yeah. It's eye-opening.
Another question that just came in: how might ChatGPT benefit the search function on the O'Reilly platform? We have a session at the end of today's event on that with our Chief Product Officer, Adam Whitworth. So stay tuned for that. We'll go into a demo of how we're thinking about this. And it's
I do want to throw out a couple of things. I first really woke up to this, what was going to happen when we introduced O'Reilly Answers last year. We built that on top of an earlier generation of AI technology. But even then, it was such an advance over we were using Solr for search before. And all of a sudden, you have this full text search that allows you to put queries in plain language, and it takes you right to the page, right to the minute of a video. And that was, I think, for me, a transformative experience. And what I took away from that was that it was actually going to destabilize the search market in a pretty profound way, because suddenly, companies who have like O'Reilly, or, for example, we have, I think it was, a big financial company, for example, has thousands of documents. We're going to hear from someone today about that, has control over search at a much higher level, and you're able to create much better search experiences. So we're working on, I think, some things that are quite remarkably better on the platform. I'm really excited about rolling them out as soon as possible.
Lots of good stuff to come there.
Yeah.
It's kind of hearkening back to the previous conversation. Obviously, ChatGPT, other alternatives, they're trained on web content, and that content can itself be biased. And so, how can we ensure that opinions that are answered as a result of queries to generative AI? Obviously, if the training data is not equally represented, then the answers won't be, equally representative of all opinions either. And so, what are some ways that you think in the future we'll be able to mitigate that type of disadvantage?
Well, first off, I would say that this is true of the internet in general as well, and particularly as we've moved. In the old days, when you got the 10 blue links or whatever. You kind of looked and you had a chance to evaluate a few different options, and Google, for example, used signals like what they called the long click versus the short click. If somebody clicked on something and went away, they were presumably satisfied. If they clicked on something and came right back and clicked on the next link, they weren't satisfied. So that was a signal. And there's all kinds of signals that will tell us, is that actually better or worse? Now, the question of bias is a pretty deep one. I don't think we're going to sort it out quickly. But unlike a lot of people who kind of go around saying, oh, this is so terrible, these models are biased, I look at it and I go, oh my God, for the first time, humanity has a spiritual mirror, at scale that shows us our biases. It shows us all these things. And what we need to do is say, oh, wow, this is an opportunity to fix that. And bit by bit, we're going to be fixing the bias. There's a whole way of thinking about it, of somehow we have to keep all the bad stuff out of the training set. And I go, no, the bad stuff is representative of humanity. So what we have to do is we look at that and you go, wow, we're amplifying something bad. Let's not do that. Or that's not a good look on us. It's just kind of like if you're shopping and you go try on some clothes and you go, oh yeah, that looks terrible on me. You think we now have the moral equivalent of the shopping mirror, where you can say, wow, that looks terrible on us. And it's going to be a painful process. But I look at this as an incredibly powerful tool for making us all better. And better in terms of our productivity, but better in terms of our understanding of ourselves and what we do wrong and the sources of what we do wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, OpenAI has talked a lot about safety and bias, and they're obviously thinking a lot about that, as one would expect. Do you think the onus for protecting end users is going to be with OpenAI or the developers that build solutions on top of OpenAI and ChatGPT, or some combination thereof? Or who's ultimately responsible here?
I think I think from a legal point of view, for many of these things, there's going to be an underlying liability that goes back to the producer, rather than the intermediary that draws on. Like if it's going to have to be somebody determining, where did this problem, whatever the problem is, where was it introduced? Was it introduced by say OpenAI or Google or whomever, or was it introduced by a third-party developer building on top of those results? But again, it's just like everything else. This is going to be an unsettled area for some time to come. And, a lot of internet law is still unsettled. The thing I've been pushing for is just that we start having a standardized set of disclosures. Now, the people put out what they call a model card or a system card for these large models, but they're not really, I don't think they're, if you compare them, say, to a financial disclosure, that companies are required to make, they don't have the level of detail that lets you say, well, what changed, what's different. And I've been kind of thinking there ought to be an attempt to build something the equivalent of generally accepted accounting principles, except for AI. Okay, what are the things that companies who build these things are required to report on a regular basis, not just optionally? And some of those things will make companies uncomfortable. They go, oh, that's my trade secret. I go, well, yeah, well, that's kind of the cost of doing business, just like you have to report your financials, and sometimes the market doesn't like what you report, And so again, I think it's this huge challenge, but also that means it's a huge opportunity. So if you're an accounting firm or a consulting firm or a financial firm, you go, wow, I have this new greenfield opportunity to figure this out and get competitive advantage from it, or I have greenfield opportunity to figure it out and help my customers with it. It's an opportunity, not just something to be scared of.
Sure. So kind of moving to a topic slightly closer to home. Question here, what is to be done about models training with content that they don't own? Obviously, we have views on IP here at O'Reilly, but curious how you're thinking about this and what the future looks like for this.
I have several thoughts about it, and one of them is the presence of kind of layers of training. Yes. So let's just I know that there is potentially copyrighted content in some of the models already, but if you look at what we're doing or what Morgan Stanley is doing, or all kinds of other companies, we're taking that base model and we're training on top of it. And so people are saying we're going to get the use of our copyrighted content because it's in our value added training set, not in the base training set. But that being said, there's also, I think that there will have to be work done to trace things back. But I also think we need to understand what is fair use. So if you think about generative AI, for example, and art, many years ago, back in the early days of the internet, there was also this huge thing of people being afraid that this was all about piracy, and the copyright industries were all complaining. And I wrote a piece called "Piracy is Progressive Taxation." And the idea was, you have to worry about piracy if you're already well known. And if you're already well known, you're probably making a lot of money anyway. And so a little bit of piracy on the margins is not killing you. Whereas if you're not well known, the visibility that the internet gives you is this boon. And of course, the internet economy has been built on that. All these previously unknown people who suddenly can be creators on, YouTube or TikTok or whatever. And that was this kind of like actually encouraged more creativity. I think that the creativity gains were probably greater than the losses of the people who previously had some kind of monopoly control over access to content. So I think there's some similar issues here with AI. Like if you say, I want a picture in the style of Van Gogh from Mid-Journey or Dali 2, Van Gogh doesn't care. This stuff is really it is kind of in the commons now. And if you're a contemporary artist, there's going to be some number of contemporary artists who are well enough known, but frankly, most people are not going to be, they're not going to be generally showing up in derivative works because nobody knows about them. Mm-hmm. And maybe if they did, that would actually tend to make them more valuable. And so we just don't know. And I was listening to a presentation from the Alan Turing Institute in the UK the other day, and it was a lawyer who was talking about EU AI laws that are coming down the pike, and it reminded me a lot of some of the early internet discussions with a lot of fear mongering and all these terrible things are going to happen. And yes, some bad things happen, some good things happen, and our job is to make more of the good and fewer of the bad, and that's what keeps us all busy.
Mm-hmm. I like that summary. That's good. So I guess we'll wrap up with one other question, which has come in, which I thought was particularly astute and really made a point. HP would never have changed the world with a portable calculator that was only right 99% of the time. So do you see a path toward 0% hallucination?
You know, I would have to say Google is right, only part of the time. And in fact, all human beings hallucinate. I think that's one of the things that, again, on this AI as a mirror. Think about all the times when somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, and how often you kind of just skate by with some bullshit. We hallucinate. And in fact, I used in this op-ed I wrote recently about this idea about, kind of coming up with AI disclosures similar to financial disclosures. I said, it's really important for companies, for AI developers to get involved in this conversation, because otherwise what's going to happen is outside advocates and legislators are going to hallucinate policies that are plausible but not actually effective. Mm-hmm. And so, that's happens all the time. Humans do the same thing. We make up stuff when we don't really know the right answer. And so, and certainly, if you look at, that's the whole history of the internet. It didn't stop Google from building an enormous business and everybody else out there on the internet, where, as science fiction writer Theodore Sturgeon once said, this is, those of you who don't read science fiction don't know Sturgeon's law, but he was a science fiction writer from the 30s to the 50s, whatever. And somebody once said, 95% of science fiction is crap. And he said, yeah, 95% of everything is crap. And that's called so-called Sturgeon's law. And I actually think that, if you try these things, you go, yeah, they're pretty useful. And you have to get, and I think Satya's comment that they're usefully wrong is interesting. I was trying to come up with an invitation list for an event, and I was sort of interrogating ChatGPT for some people at various companies, and it was coming up with people. Some of them didn't actually work for the companies that it said they work for, but they were really interesting people, and so it became this useful tool for just interrogating this this space that would previously have been invisible. So just like the internet, where you would search and you go, yeah, there's a lot of crap, and then you find the thing you're looking for. I think we'll get used to understanding that we have to, those of us who are smart about it will get used to saying, well, you get what you can out of it, but you have to be careful and you have to, look at it and verify. And the people who don't do that, well, they're not doing it now.